Welcome back to my shop. Today I'm going to talk about how to install bed rail fasteners. Now, when I build a bed, I like to have some nice knockdown hardware, so if I need to move the bed, it's easy to take it apart. I actually prefer not to see the hardware, so I like to use these bed fasteners right here. And this piece here gets mortised into the headboard and footboard posts, and this piece gets mortised into the side rails. Now, this kind of hardware is not very expensive, and it's really nice to use, but one problem that you find with things like this is it typically comes in packaging like this, right? Completely and utterly devoid of instructions. So I've installed these personally several times. So I figured I would go ahead and take a minute and show you guys how to do it, for those of you who don't know how. Okay. In order to get this knockdown hardware installed, we're going to need a couple of mortises. All right. The first mortise is going to be to mortise the thickness of this plate flush into the leg. But in addition to that, to those two mortises, or 4 mortises, we're going to actually have to place some mortises within the mortise. And what we're going to need to do is we're going to have to allow room for these hooks. And not only are we going to have to allow room for those hooks, but we're going to have to allow room for the hooks to come through as well as go down. So I figure the easiest way to determine the length of those mortises is to go ahead and put these two together, and then the outlines here this is going to give you the initial size of the secondary mortise that you're going to need to make this hardware work. So we'll just go ahead and put these together, and then we'll allow them to slide like so, and then we'll go ahead and we'll make a mark right there underneath the bottom of this hook here. And then when we disassemble this, this is going to give us the measurement that we need for those 2 secondary mortises. Actually, so now we have our primary mortise, which is 5 inches by 5/8. And in addition to that, we're going to have 2 secondary mortises that are roughly 1 inch and 5/8. What we're going to need to complete this operation, if you're going to do it with machines, you could just as easily do it with hand tools if you're so inclined. But what we're going to need is a router of some kind. You can freehand it, but I'm going to go ahead and use an edge guide to complete this process. And I'm also going to be using a 1/4 inch router bit for the secondary mortise, as well as a 5/8 inch bit for the primary mortise. Now, if you don't have a 5/8 inch bit, you could just as easily use a 1/2 inch bit, and you could also set your edge guide so that it's centered slightly off center of the hole, maybe a 1/16th of an inch in each direction to give you that extra 1/8 of an inch. Or you could just make your mortise a 1/2 inch and use some chisels to finesse the shoulders of the mortise. So, as you can see here, I have all of my mortises marked out. I have the smaller secondary mortises marked out right here, and I've drawn pencil lines through those only just to avoid confusion. Now that I have all that set up, I'm going to go ahead and plug it up. Alright, so I'm going to attempt to do this in a couple passes. So I'll make a shallow pass referencing off the outside face. Let's see, how does that work? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to do this in multiple passes. I have my router bit set for a pretty shallow cut, and I'll make a pass for each of these 8 mortises at this depth, and then I'll go back and adjust it a little bit more incrementally until I get deep enough for my hooks to fit in. So there we go. Now that that's complete, we need to make the mortise to house this piece of the bracket here. So just go ahead and set your router bit height so that you can cut to this depth here, and we're good there. And we'll go ahead and get started. As we all know, round bits leave round mortises, so we're going to take care of that with our chisel. Okay. While I was off camera, I went ahead and I set up a little test block to see what I would need to do to get this piece to fit into the end of the rails. So I went ahead and I readjusted my fence to place the mortise centered on the stock, and there's some little rivets on the back here, so you have to drill a couple of small holes. I did that with a brad point bit, which didn't go very well, so I think I'm going to use a Fastener bit when I do this for real. So either way, I went ahead and I set that up, and then I arrived at the appropriate measure for both ends, which is really the only measurement that I need to make, since I'm going to be stopping freehand with the router. Now, the real issue here is, unfortunately, the side rails aren't this size. Okay, so they're actually 75 and a half inches long. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to figure out a way to work on the end of this piece, on the end of the rail pieces. So I think what I decided to do is go ahead and clamp that to the table of my table saw at an angle, so that I can get it at a comfortable height that's easy for me to work with. So let me go ahead and show you that now. Okay, so here's my setup. All right, so you can see it's good and sturdy. So what I have here is I have one clamp right here, clamped on from the top of the rail here, and one that's clamped on from the bottom. And that's going to present the end grain of this piece at an angle that's going to be comfortable and safe for me to work with. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and measure out my start and stop points.